Joining me now is Cara McCormick. She's co-founder of the Committee for Ranked Choice Voting. Fascinating. We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but a lot of on-the-ground details now that the elections have happened. Cara, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Cenk.
No problem. Great to have you here. All right.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So you worked in politics for a stunning number of folks for a stunning number of years.
Thanks.
But ranked choice voting is new, relatively new, and so I'm really curious about the implementation of it. So they have it in Maine now, and you advocated for getting it implemented in Maine. Before we get to the results, I actually want to talk a little bit about how you got that done. It wasn't easy. What was the process for making that the system of voting in Maine?
So we started the battle for ranked choice voting about 4 years ago. The first thing we did was we got 5 people together to petition the Secretary of State to put a law on the ballot which would have ranked choice voting in all federal elections and all state elections. And we gathered over the course of about a year, 10% of the signatures. We needed 61,123 signatures, which we got. We got on the ballot. We won an election in November of 2016. We won with the second highest most votes of any citizen referendum in the history of the state of Maine. And we thought we had ranked choice voting, and it was going to be the law of the state of Maine. It was the law of the state of Maine through the Citizens Initiative process. And on January 7th, it became the law. And about 4 days later, we realized that the legislature was going to repeal the law and take it off the books, which is exactly what they did in a special session, a late night session of the legislature that they called specifically for this purpose. In one of the most anti-democratic things that I've ever seen, they repealed the ranked choice voting law on October 23rd of 2017. So luckily in the state of Maine, we have something in our constitution called the people's veto. So that allows us to not only propose laws and get them passed by the people, but it also allows us to veto laws that they've passed, which we find repellent. So this time what we did is in 88 days in the middle of the winter, we gathered another 80,000 signatures. We had at that time almost 2,000 volunteers in the streets collecting those signatures. We turned them in, we froze the law in place, and we used ranked choice voting for the very first time in the state of Maine on June 12th. And on that same day, we voted again to keep ranked choice voting. And we won this time by an 8% margin.
So Cara, let me guess, the Republicans, as usual, opposed democracy. And I say that not because ranked choice voting is necessarily more democratic, although that argument certainly could be made, but it was a ballot measure. So we passed the ballot measure. They're like, yeah, we don't care about your stinking democracy. But was it just the Republicans, or did some of the establishment Democrats go along as well?
It was the Republicans for the most part. It was the Senate president, but it was also there were also Democrats for sure that were against ranked choice voting, and they, together with the Republicans, were able to repeal the law that we voted for literally in the middle of the night in a special session that they called just to do that. And it was stunning to watch. I was in the gallery that night, and I couldn't believe my eyes that these politicians, these elected representatives in Maine, would so ignore the results of a free and fair election and ignore the will of the people of Maine to choose the way that we elect our leaders.
Yeah, well, unfortunately these days it's very believable. South Dakota did it in a ballot measure. Michigan's doing it right now in their lame duck session. They're trying to gut a couple of ballot initiatives. In every one of those cases, it's Republican-led legislatures that are saying, we don't care about democracy, we're not in favor of democracy, and if you vote in a way that disadvantages the Republican Party, we will just illegally get rid of the ballot measure. It's unbelievable, but here we are.
It is, and I've worked in politics I've worked in politics for 25 years, and it still was stunning to watch it happen right on the board before your very eyes when we knew how hard we had worked to pass it. But the great news is that at least in Maine, we had the power to take it back again. And so now, I don't know if you know that saying, the obstacle is the way. But by them repealing it, it just made us stronger. It had the people come together in such a way that they really saw it as a crucible. They saw it as their in their DNA. They got out into the streets. It was one of the coldest winters ever in the history of Maine. We collected signatures during what was called a bomb cyclone, and people just owned it. They took it back. It was awesome. It was, as anti-democratic and horrible as it was to see, the beauty of the people rising up and sort of going through this crucible together and then coming through it should give everyone hope. Should give everyone hope.
That is a good, inspiring story. Did you say that it was a bomb cyclone?
That's what they called the storm that came through. It was called a bomb cyclone. And so one of the things we did in the middle of it was sent messages around to each other saying, here's how to collect signatures during a bomb cyclone. Make sure that you get a gel pen so the ink won't freeze. Make sure that you stuff your pen inside your glove, in between getting signatures. It was really cold.
Now that's folks fighting for democracy, okay? And I think that bomb cyclone is one of the nicknames for Donald Trump. Okay, so now let's talk about the results. So you got ranked choice voting, and then what happened in Maine District 2?
So in Congressional District 2, we had our first ranked choice voting election in June. We chose our Democratic nominee for governor, our Republican nominee for governor using ranked choice voting. And then we had in the general election, the first ever races for US House and US Senate using ranked choice voting. And in the second Congressional District, we had 4 candidates for Congress. One was a Democrat. His name was Bruce Poliquin. He was the incumbent Republican politician. The Democrat is called Jared Golden, and he was the Democratic politician. And then we had 2 independents who ran, a woman called Tiffany Bond and a man named Will Hoare. And in the first round of counting in ranked choice voting, Bruce Poliquin and Jared Golden were the top 2, each with roughly 46% of the vote. And in the second round of counting, or when the ranked choice voting kicked in, Jared Golden moved ahead from the plurality vote into the majority, and so was declared the winner of that election. Although we were just in court today because the Republicans are still fighting ranked choice voting in the courts. We're in yeah.
So let's break it down a little bit further. So
sure.
Do you only go to the second round if no one gets a majority in the first round?
That's correct. If somebody gets 50% plus 1 in the first round, they're the winner.
Okay, so and that makes sense because it's logical. You could add up all the other votes and you're still not going to pass 50.1, right?
That's right.
Right. So if Poliquin, the Republican, had won outright, then it would have been over, but he didn't. So it was. But he did have the lead in the first round, 46.4 to 45.5.
That's correct.
And apparently the people who liked the independents liked Golden better than they liked Poliquin, so they ranked him higher. And when you put their votes in, then Golden wins in the second round. So what's the Poliquin's argument here? I mean, you have ranked choice voting. That's what the system produced. So what's he claiming?
So he is claiming in federal court, United States District Court, with a brand new judge, Lance E. Walker, who's a Trump-appointed judge, is claiming that ranked choice voting is unconstitutional under the United States Constitution. He says that or his lawyers say that it violates the Article 1, Section 2 of the United States Constitution, which says that a vote should be is of the people. And they're saying that of the people in our Constitution, or chosen by the people in our Constitution, means chosen by a first past the post plurality vote.
Yeah, I don't think that ranked choice voting makes people not people. So I'm not sure that that's a sound argument. There's still people.
Well, the judge doesn't think so either. They asked for a TRO. They asked to halt the counting of the ballots, to stop the election, to declare him the winner immediately, to stop this crazy scheme. And the judge, again, a Trump-appointed judge, he'd been on the job for about 3 weeks at the time that he heard our case the first time. He said, no, there is not a constitutional infirmity here. Ranked choice voting is constitutional. I'm not going to stop the election. And we went back to court today and argued again. Long, I think we were there for about 5 hours today. But this has been quite a battle.
So, Cara, last thing here.
Can't imagine.
Last thing here, real quick. So I'm not seeing this wrong, right? If it turns out that the other candidates that were in the race that came in third and fourth were, for example, libertarians, and they had ranked Poliquin ahead, he would have won, even if he was losing in the first round. So it's not like it's rigged against Republicans. In a lot of cases, it could actually help Republicans.
Oh, absolutely not. This is one of the things that, all that Republicans and Democrats have to do under a ranked choice voting system to win is to put forward a candidate that's attractive to Democrats, Republicans, and independents. You want to be the most attractive candidate to the broadest number of people. You want to get over 50% of the vote. If you're not somebody's first choice, then you definitely want to be their second choice. And these candidates get elected with a nice, broad majority of the people.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful system.
Yeah. Winning with a majority of the votes sounds like, a democracy.
Right.
Okay. Cara McCormick, co-founder of the Committee for Ranked Choice Voting. Thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Cenk. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
On the go? Don't worry, we got you covered. You can still listen to TYT at our new podcast network. Find us on Apple Podcasts, the Google Play Store, or at tyt.com/podcast.